Smart people win arguments. Strategic people win influence. To truly outsmart someone, you don't need to raise your voice. Just raise your level of thinking. Let that sink in for a second. Because this isn't about being clever or manipulative. This is about being dangerous in the right way, composed, calculated, and always in command. Outsmarting others isn't about flashy words or intellectual games. It's about learning how to own your mind so deeply that no one else can shake it. Mastering others begins with mastering yourself. There's a myth that dominance requires noise, big energy, big ego, big reactions. That couldn't be further from the truth. True dominance is quiet. It's patient. It watches the room before speaking. It doesn't announce its power. It asserts it without saying a word. And there are 5 rules I've lived by. Whether I was sitting across from a liar in an interrogation room, navigating dangerous environments, or commanding a room full of decision makers, that gave me total control without ever needing to raise my voice. The first rule is simple. Control the frame. Every interaction you have lives inside a frame, a context. Whoever controls that frame controls how the situation plays out. You walk into a room, you either adapt to someone else's vibe, or you bring your own and make them adjust to you. If someone starts the conversation with, "Let's be honest, this probably isn't going to work," they've just framed the situation for failure. But you can flip that. Respond with calm certainty, not panic. That's one perspective. Let's explore others. When I was conducting high-stakes interviews, I never let the subject define the dynamic. The moment you let someone else shape your image, your value, or your power, you've already lost. So you set the frame, you hold the frame, and you don't let it bend just because someone else is louder or more aggressive. The second rule? Master your emotional state. Power doesn't belong to the loudest person in the room. It belongs to the calmest. The person who can stay centered while others unravel. That's the one who wins. When someone pushes your buttons, they're not attacking you. They're testing your self-control. Let me tell you, I've been face-to-face with people who tried to provoke me in every way. Insults, deflection, emotional bait. But when you stay in control, when your emotions don't flinch, you become untouchable. That's power. Because while they're reacting, you're observing. While they're escalating, you're choosing. The strongest person isn't the one who yells. It's the one who doesn't need to. Next, rule number 3. Use silence like a weapon. People hate silence. They rush to fill it. And when they do, they often expose things they didn't mean to. The most underused power move is not responding right away. Pause. Wait. Let the moment expand. It creates tension. It demands presence. In negotiations, that pause after a question can force the other person to keep talking, to reveal more, to start doubting themselves. I've seen grown men trip over their own lies simply because they couldn't sit in silence with their own words. You have to train yourself to be comfortable with discomfort. Because silence, used the right way, isn't weakness. It's control. Fourth, learn to read what isn't said. People lie with words, but they leak the truth with behavior. The eyes, the body, the micro-movements, they all give you data. You don't need to be a mind reader. You just need to pay attention. When someone says, "I'm fine," but pulls back, crosses their arms, looks away, that's not alignment. That's tension. That's a red flag. Whether you're in a boardroom or a relationship, the real story is written between the lines. That skill of reading humans, of decoding behavior, that's your competitive edge. I used it every day, not just to detect deception, but to detect fear, doubt, insecurity. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And when you understand what others don't even realize they're projecting, you have the upper hand. And finally, Rule 5. Prepare like a professional. Confidence isn't built on wishful thinking. It's built on preparation. You want to dominate a conversation? Know the facts. Know the people. Know their patterns, their triggers, their fears. That's how you go in with certainty. I never walked into a mission or interrogation unprepared. Every detail mattered. Every variable counted. Most people wing it, and then wonder why they lose. But when you prepare, deeply, obsessively, you don't need to prove yourself. You are the proof. Control the frame. You want to outsmart someone? Start by controlling the frame, not the facts, not the logic, the frame. Because the person who frames the situation controls the meaning of everything that follows. That's how power works. It's not always about what is said. It's about who defines the lens through which it's seen. Think about it like this. When you walk into a room, whether it's a negotiation, a difficult conversation, or a confrontation, you either create the energy or you absorb it. And if you're absorbing someone else's energy, someone else's attitude, someone else's narrative, you've already given away control. That's not dominance. That's reaction. And people who only react are always one step behind. I've sat across from people who were trained to lie, trained to manipulate, trained to flip the script on me the moment I let my guard down. So, I never did. Because the minute someone else gets to set the emotional tone of the conversation, they win. Let's say you're in a meeting and someone cuts you off, dismisses your point, and tries to shut down your input. You could get flustered, you could get defensive, or you can calmly reclaim the frame. You slow your breath, you hold your posture, and you say, "I'll continue when you're ready to listen." That one sentence, that's a power shift, because you didn't just accept their terms, you redefined the rules of the engagement without breaking a sweat. I remember early in my career, I walked into rooms where I was the only woman, the youngest person, and clearly underestimated. I never matched their energy. I made them match mine. Because when you walk in already owning the space, shoulders back, voice steady, mind sharp, people feel that. They may not know why, but they shift. And that's the frame working before you've even said a word. It's not about being arrogant, it's about being anchored. When you set the tone, others adapt. When you don't, you're always playing catch-up. That's not how you lead, that's how you survive, and surviving is not the goal here. Dominating is. Controlling the frame doesn't mean being rigid. It means knowing who you are and deciding what the rules of engagement will be, and sticking to them. You define the emotional boundaries. You decide what energy you allow. You control the message you send with your presence, with your silence, with your tone. In fact, some of the strongest framing happens without any words at all. It happens in how you enter a room, in how you respond when someone tries to rattle you, in how you hold your ground when they expect you to fold. Let me tell you, when you show someone that their behavior can't influence your emotional state, you become untouchable. You send a message without saying a word. I don't need to out-talk you, I just need to outlast you. I've used this in the field, in the room, on the stage. And every time I held the frame, I held the power. It doesn't mean you win every argument, it means you never lose yourself in one. So the next time someone tries to throw you off, remember this. You don't need to defend your worth. You don't need to argue for your voice to matter. You don't need to match their energy to be heard. You just need to own the frame. Calm, controlled, certain. Because when you carry yourself like your opinion matters, people begin to believe it does. And when you control the perception, you control the outcome. This rule is the foundation for everything else. Without it, you're playing by someone else's rules. But when you master it, when you walk into any situation already grounded, already leading, already clear on who you are, there's nothing anyone can throw at you that will shake you. And that right there is the beginning of total mental dominance. Master emotional control. Let's get one thing straight. If you can't command your emotions, you'll never command a room. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if your emotions hijack your thinking, you lose your edge. You lose the ability to see, to hear, to respond with purpose instead of reaction. Emotional control is not about suppression. It's about power. The power to choose your response no matter how chaotic the moment gets. The power to stay unshaken while everyone else is spiraling. That's real dominance. That's real strength. There have been moments in my life when people tried to break me, emotionally, mentally, strategically. Not because they had more knowledge, not because they had more authority, but because they sensed that if they could just get under my skin, they could take control. That's what emotional warfare looks like. And if you're not prepared for it, it'll eat you alive. I've sat across people who insulted me, questioned my competence, tried to bait me into losing my cool, because once you react emotionally, you give them the upper hand. You're now responding on their terms. You've left the driver's seat and handed them the wheel. But here's what happens when you don't react. When you breathe instead of burst. When you pause instead of panic. When you answer with calm precision instead of defensive noise. You disarm them. You throw them off. Because they're expecting you to react like everyone else. But you're not everyone else. You're trained. You're intentional. You've already run this scenario in your mind. And you're not moved by petty attacks or emotional storms. That rattles people more than any threat you could make. Because now they can't predict you. And what they can't predict, they can't control. Emotional control also means being able to sit with discomfort and not flinch. Not everything needs a reaction. Not every insult requires a comeback. Not every challenge needs to be confronted right then and there. The person who can respond, but chooses not to? That's the one in charge. That's the one playing the long game. I remember being in situations where my silence was louder than someone else's shouting, where my stillness disrupted their chaos, where my refusal to engage emotionally forced them to rethink their entire strategy. And let's be honest, this isn't easy. It takes practice. It takes discipline. You don't just wake up one day emotionally bulletproof. You build that muscle day by day, moment by moment. You train yourself to recognize your triggers. You catch the reaction before it becomes action. You hold the space between impulse and decision, and in that space, you find your freedom. You start to realize that your emotions are not your enemies, but they're also not your leaders. You feel them, you acknowledge them, but you don't follow them blindly. You lead them. Think about it. How many times have you looked back at a moment where you lost your temper, or acted out of fear, or let anxiety take over, and regretted it? Not because the feeling wasn't valid, but because you let it speak louder than your intention. Emotional control gives you that pause, that breath, that ability to zoom out and ask yourself, what outcome do I want here? And once you do that, everything changes. You become a strategist, not just a participant. I've been in front of high-stakes decision-makers, skeptics, critics, even those looking to see me fail. And I never let them see me sweat. Not because I didn't feel pressure, not because I didn't have doubts, but because I never let those feelings make the decisions for me. I chose how to move. I chose when to speak. I chose how to respond. And that choice, that self-command, that's what separates those who crumble under pressure from those who rise in it. When you walk into a situation with your emotions in check, your energy clean, your focus razor sharp, people notice. They may not say it, but they feel it. You become the one they look to when things go sideways. You become the anchor. The one who doesn't need to shout to be heard. The one who doesn't need to prove anything because their presence already says everything. And that kind of control, that's not something you borrow or fake. That's something you build. One intentional response at a time. Use silence as a weapon. Silence is one of the most underrated tools of power. Most people run from it. They fill it. They panic in it. They confuse noise with authority and movement with progress. But the truth is, silence, when used with intention, is not emptiness. It's leverage. It creates tension. It makes people uncomfortable. And when people get uncomfortable, they reveal things they normally wouldn't. You want to see someone's truth? Don't talk over them. Ask your question and then wait. Don't flinch. Don't jump in to rescue the conversation. Just hold the silence. Watch what they do with it. That space, that pause, that moment of stillness. It's where the power shifts. I've used this over and over again. Whether it was in an interrogation room, a negotiation, or a critical conversation. People think power is in what you say. But real power? It's in what you withhold. In knowing that you don't always need to respond immediately. You don't always need to have the last word. When you give yourself permission to just pause, strategically, not passively, you're choosing the rhythm of the interaction. And the one who controls the rhythm controls the room. There's a psychological principle at play here. People crave resolution. When there's silence, most feel compelled to fill it, with explanations, with confessions, with justifications. And that's exactly when the truth slips out. I've watched people unravel in silence, not because I said something aggressive, but because I didn't say anything at all. I let the silence do the talking. I let them feel the weight of their own words. And eventually, they either fold or reveal what they've been trying to hide. Silence can also be used to establish dominance without saying a single word. You walk into a meeting and someone tries to cut you off. Don't argue. Pause. Look at them. Wait. That momentary silence will speak louder than any rebuttal because you're showing, without raising your voice, that you're not rattled. You're not seeking validation. You're not in a rush to prove your point. That patience, that stillness, it makes people lean in. It forces them to consider what you're going to say next. And that anticipation? That's control. I remember one moment clearly. I was debriefing someone who was dodging every question, deflecting, giving half-truths. I stayed calm. I asked my question, and then I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. 1 second passed, then 3, then 5. And suddenly, he started talking again, trying to fill the space. And in that ramble, I got exactly what I needed. Not because I pressured him, but because I let the silence do the work. That's not passive. That's precision. In everyday life, silence is just as powerful. You're in a conversation with someone trying to control the narrative, dominate the energy. Don't compete with their noise. Don't try to one-up their aggression. Use silence. Let them run out of steam. Let them exhaust their tactics. And when the moment's right, you speak with impact. Not with volume, but with clarity. That's the kind of speech that lands. That's the kind of energy people remember. But here's the catch. Using silence effectively requires self-trust. You have to be comfortable with discomfort. You have to resist the urge to prove yourself, to rush in, to make noise for the sake of appearing strong. You have to know that your power isn't in how fast you talk, but in how intentional you are. It's not about being passive or cold. It's about being so in command of yourself that you don't need to fill every moment. You understand that presence speaks louder than performance. The world rewards the person who listens more than they speak. Because that person learns, that person observes, that person strikes at the right moment, not every moment. I don't care if you're dealing with a boss, a client, a critic, or someone trying to manipulate you. Your ability to use silence, to sit with it, to own it, is your edge. It throws people off. It breaks their patterns. It makes them uncomfortable while you remain composed. So the next time you're tempted to respond quickly, to fill that awkward gap, to match someone's chaos with your own, don't. Hold the line. Let the silence stretch. You'll be amazed at what rises to the surface when you stop trying to fill the air. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits, calm, focused, silent, and absolutely in control. Read what's not said. If you want to truly outsmart people, stop listening only to what they say. Start paying attention to what they don't. Because words lie, but behavior doesn't. People might say all the right things, but their bodies, their tone, their energy, they're leaking the truth every second. If you don't know how to read that, you're always at a disadvantage. But once you do know, once you can pick up on the smallest cues, the briefest hesitations, the tiniest shift in eye contact, posture, or tone, you walk into every situation with an edge that no one can take from you. This isn't about mind reading. It's about awareness. It's about sharpening your observation so well that nothing slips by you. Most people walk through the world only half paying attention. They're too distracted by their own thoughts, their own need to speak, to control, to win. But dominance starts with presence, the ability to see clearly, to detect the micro-expressions, the inconsistencies between someone's words and their body language, the tension behind a smile, the discomfort hidden beneath polished words. That's where the real information lives. Not in the script they're rehearsing, but in the cracks between their performance. I've seen people give away everything without realizing it. Their voice might be confident, but their body leans back, just slightly. They nod, but their eyes don't stay with you. They agree, but their fingers tap the table, revealing anxiety. Those aren't random habits, they're signals. And once you train yourself to notice them, you'll start seeing the story under the story. That's when you stop reacting to the surface and start responding to the truth underneath. I remember being in a high-level conversation with someone who had all the right credentials, all the polish, all the control, but something felt off. He was saying the right words, agreeing, aligning, but I noticed it. He never fully faced me. His shoulders remained turned slightly away. His eye contact would break just a second too soon. To most, it might seem like nothing. But to me, that was hesitation. That was discomfort. That was someone with a hidden agenda. And sure enough, days later, it came out. He wasn't being straight. Not because of what he said, but because of what his body couldn't hide. Reading what's unsaid is a discipline. You have to stop waiting for people to tell you who they are. You have to observe. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your eyes. How do they enter a room? Where do they sit? Do they take up space or shrink in? Do they over-explain? Do they change their tone when the subject shifts? All of it matters. All of it reveals something. And the more you practice, the faster you'll spot the patterns. You'll start noticing when someone's being genuine, or when they're selling you a version of themselves. And it's not just about catching lies. It's also about understanding where people are emotionally. Someone might not say they're nervous, but their hands are clenched. Someone might not say they're unsure, but they keep looking for reassurance in the room. Once you see it, you can adjust, you can pivot, you can lead better. You become the person who isn't just speaking, they're reading the room. And trust me, that is a level of power most people never reach. I've used this in every space I've ever operated in, on the job, in interviews, on stage, in high-pressure situations. What gave me the edge wasn't just knowledge. It was the ability to see what others missed. That gave me confidence, because I didn't need to guess. I didn't need to hope I understood the situation. I knew, because I paid attention. I watched, I tracked, I read what was happening beneath the surface, and that told me exactly how to move. And you can do this too. But you've got to slow down. You've got to stop being in such a rush to speak, to respond, to prove. Observe first. Let people show you who they are before you decide how to engage. The moment you stop looking at just the face and start looking at the full picture, their energy, their habits, their inconsistencies, you step into a position of quiet dominance. You're not just playing the game, you're reading the whole board. And the person who can do that, that's the one who stays 5 moves ahead, always. Prepare like a pro. Let's get something straight. Confidence doesn't come from winging it. It doesn't come from hoping everything goes your way. It comes from preparation. Real, intentional, obsessive preparation. The kind of prep that makes you walk into any room and own it, not wonder if you belong there. When you see someone operate with calm, quiet certainty, when you see them handle challenges without blinking, what you're really seeing is preparation in action. That's not luck. That's not natural charisma. That's someone who did the work before the moment ever arrived. Most people want the win, but don't want the wait. They want the respect, but skip the grind. But let me tell you, when I was walking into high-stakes environments, whether it was an interrogation, a briefing, or a critical meeting, I didn't leave anything to chance. I studied every angle, every person in the room, every possible scenario. I didn't just prepare for what I thought would happen. I prepared for what might happen. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs hope for the best. Professionals prepare for every outcome and still stay flexible when the unexpected hits. I've seen people crumble in situations they should have handled, not because they weren't smart, but because they weren't ready. They thought they could improvise their way through pressure. They thought charm or speed would carry them. But pressure reveals preparation. When the stakes are high, your mind doesn't rise to the occasion. It falls to the level of your training. That's why I trained relentlessly. Not because I was afraid, but because I never wanted to have to be afraid. My edge wasn't talent. My edge was that I showed up already 2 steps ahead. And I want you to do the same. You want to dominate in an interview? Then know the room. Know the company. Know the mission, the tone, the vision, the person sitting across from you. Learn their language before you speak your own. You want to lead a negotiation? Study the other side. What are their priorities? What are their fears? What will make them flinch? What's the one thing they're not expecting you to know? When you walk in with that kind of readiness, people feel it. They don't even know why they trust you. They just do. Because you're not guessing. You're not grasping. You're grounded. Preparation isn't just about research. It's about mental conditioning. It's about rehearsing responses to pressure, running scenarios through your mind, asking yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen, and how will I handle it? That kind of mental training builds resilience. It creates a mindset that isn't just reactionary, it's strategic. You don't get caught off guard because you've already played that move in your head. You've already visualized what calm looks like under fire. You've made stress your sparring partner. So when the real thing hits, it doesn't shake you. It activates you. There's this myth that being powerful means being spontaneous, unpredictable. But let me tell you, the most dangerous people I've ever encountered were the most prepared. The ones who didn't need to prove anything because they already knew they were ready. That's a different kind of power. It doesn't show up in flash. It shows up in consistency, in presence, in the ability to remain unshaken while everyone else is scrambling to catch up. And let's be real, it's not always exciting. Preparation is gritty. It's quiet. It's early mornings and late nights. It's reviewing details that no one else cares about. But those details, they're what give you the edge. They're what make people lean in when you speak. They're what make people think twice before challenging you. Because even if they don't see the hours you put in, they feel the difference. And that's what you want, not just to perform, but to project presence, not just to talk, but to command the space. This is how I want you to think moving forward. Never walk into a room wondering if you're ready. Walk in knowing you are, because you've done the reps. You've run the game before the game even started. You've armored your mind and sharpened your strategy. You've prepared so deeply that confidence isn't something you fake, it's something you own. You don't need to second-guess yourself. You don't need to convince anyone. You've already convinced the only person that matters, you. And that kind of preparation, that's how you stop reacting and start dominating. True dominance isn't loud. It's composed. It doesn't need to interrupt, over-explain, or prove itself with noise. It shows up in how you carry yourself, how you observe before reacting, how you respond with calm when the rest of the room is in chaos. That kind of dominance, the unshakable, quiet kind, isn't something you're born with. It's something you build every single day through intention, discipline, and self-command. The truth is, most people are walking around in reactive mode. They're triggered by everything, by a look, a comment, a disagreement, a challenge. And when you're reactive, you're easy to read, easy to manipulate, easy to knock off your game. But when you master yourself, your frame, your emotions, your silence, your perception, and your preparation, you become unpredictable in the best possible way. No one can throw you off because you've already trained yourself to stay centered. No one can control you because you've already taken control of yourself. Every rule you just learned is not about outwitting people to get ahead. It's about rising to a level of presence, awareness, and command that makes people feel your influence without you having to declare it. This is how you start living with strategic power. You walk into a conversation, a negotiation, an interview, and you already know who you are. You already know what your value is. You're not hoping they validate you. You're not shrinking to fit in. You've already done the internal work. That's the mindset that changes everything. But don't just listen to this and move on. Let this be the shift. Let this be the line you draw in your life between who you were and who you are becoming. Start practicing these rules every day, not just when it's convenient. When someone tries to push your buttons, pause. When a room feels heavy, own your frame. When a conversation gets intense, watch what's not being said. When you're unsure of your next move, go back to your preparation. All of this becomes who you are when you live it repeatedly, intentionally, consistently. This isn't theory. This isn't fluff. I've lived it. I've tested it. I've used it in rooms where I wasn't the loudest, the strongest, or the most experienced. But I knew how to hold my ground. I knew how to keep my mind sharp, my emotions steady, and my words deliberate. And it's not just because of where I worked or what I was trained to do. It's because I made a decision early on that I would never hand my power over to anyone else. Not emotionally, not mentally, not strategically. And now, I want the same for you. Don't wait for permission to step into your power. Don't wait for someone else to recognize your strength. Decide right now that you are the authority of your life, that you'll no longer shrink to make others comfortable, that you'll no longer react just because it's easier than thinking. You'll lead, you'll strategize, you'll prepare. You'll stay quiet when it's powerful and speak only when it's impactful. You don't need to dominate people to lead them. You don't need to manipulate to win. You lead with presence. You win by staying grounded. You build real influence by embodying everything you want others to see in you: calm, control, precision, clarity, and strength. From this moment on, carry yourself like someone who's already earned respect, because you have. Carry yourself like someone who doesn't chase approval, because you don't need to. Carry yourself like someone who sees 10 moves ahead, because you've trained your mind to think, not just react. Outsmarting others doesn't begin with tricks or tactics. It begins with you. Master your mind, master your presence, master your discipline, and you'll find that you're not just playing the game anymore, you're controlling it. Now take these rules, take this mindset, and lead without apology.